episode. I call it that because at the very end, I share an older piece of my own free writing. I'm a huge proponent of free writing, and I've spoken about it in nauseam here on this podcast. But essentially, for those who don't know, what it is you literally put pen to paper and write anything and everything that comes to mind. And you'll be very surprised at what you find and learn about yourself, what you figure out, and it's a great cathartic practice. In this episode, I'm also going to share my writing stats with you to let you know where I'm at on this writing journey that I'm on and kind of keep myself honest. I'm going to share a great writing tip that my fellow writers out there can implement, or fellow creatives within their own creative endeavors. I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been reading. Spoiler alert, it's Poor Charlie's Almanac in this episode. Last but certainly not least, I share a piece of my own free writing. And the free writing kind of serves as a little piece of nostalgia for myself, a little insight for the listeners out there of how and what I was writing about a couple years back, whenever the free writing piece is from. And I get to pick it apart, see what I agree with or what still resonates, so on and so forth. And for me, most of my free writing, not all, but most, wound up being, me working through personal shit, insecurities, especially when it comes to writing, and kind of me talking to myself without consciously deciding to talk to myself and try to motivate myself to get past these personal barriers. So some of it might have some use or advice for fellow creatives out there that might be going through similar phases in their lives. And that's what we have in store for you here today on the Spun Today podcast, episode 279. But before we get into it, I wanted to share a very quick way that you can help support this show if you so choose. And then we'll jump right into the episode. You can also support by checking out my writing. Go to spuntoday.com/free writing. Here, you'll find a collection of freely written thoughts, which is intended to be a cathartic, meditative practice for myself, but also winds up doubling up as motivation and inspiration for myself and others. You can also go to spuntoday.com/short stories to check out my latest short stories, and also listen to the free audiobook versions of those stories. You can also support my writing by going to spuntoday.com/books and check out what I have available for sale. Currently available is Make Way for You, which is a collection of tips for getting out of your own way. It's a great read for my fellow writers or creatives out there. Also available is Fractal, which is my debut time travel novel. And last but certainly not least, Melted Cold, which is a collection of short stories. Each of the books are available in all digital formats for your Kindle or iBook or any other e-reader, as well as paperback and hardcover options. Again, go to spuntoday.com/books, and I'd love to hear what you chose to check out, as well as your thoughts after reading. spuntoday.com/books. My writing stats. Since I am already off to a horrible start from the perspective of my writing and podcasting goals for 2025 that I broke down in my 2024 wrap-up show, I am able to share with you my January writing stats for January 2025 because of the fact that this episode is late. It's not on my regularly scheduled every other Thursday, not even at the time of this recording. Because sometimes a lot of what happened last year when I had to re-release episodes and just did a bunch of late releases, I would record somewhat on time, but then the efforts to editing and putting it together and mixing it and putting it out, that spilled over to past my usual release date. And it's one of my goals for this year to stay on track, stay on my normal schedule that I kept for the better part of 10 years of releasing this podcast. And so far, I have not done so. So that one's for me. Another one of my goals that I'm not living up to is my actual writing stats, or the amount of time that I'm writing throughout each month. So what I do in this segment of this type of episode is tell you guys out of the given month, how many days out of that month I wrote or worked on my writing craft. And for January 2025, I wrote a whopping 4 out of the 31 days of the month for a writing percentage of 12.9%. There's another one for me. I am off to a bit of a more motivated start for February. So hopefully I ramp up on the consistency aspect of that, and I have much higher numbers to report when it comes to the February stats. But time will tell. The writing tip that I want to share with you fine folks today is kind of a collab, if you will. It's from two folks that I definitely respect and enjoy their work, both from a writing perspective and a podcasting perspective. But it's from Tim Ferriss, but via the Daily Stoic newsletter. Tim Ferriss is a fellow writer and creative, writer of best-selling books like The 4-Hour Workweek, has a great podcast, amazing interviewer for The Tim Ferriss Show. And The Daily Stoic is by another brilliant writer, Ryan Holiday, who also has the Daily Stoic podcast. He has a couple great newsletters. The Daily Stoic is one of them, which is where this tip is from, where he's citing Tim Ferriss. And another one that I've spoken about in the past called The Daily Dad, where he gives a bunch of parenting advice through the lens of Stoic philosophy. But in the Daily Stoic newsletter from January 14th, 2025, he shared this piece, which I'm going to read the excerpt from, which definitely resonated. I wanted to share with you guys as a writing tip to consider on your own writing journeys. Definitely resonated with me. And he says, speaking about generally the practice of journaling, which, by the way, you can consider free writing a type of journaling, a way to journal. He says, Tim Ferriss captures this idea perfectly when he describes his daily journaling habit. Quote, I don't journal to be productive. I don't do it to find great ideas or craft prose for publication. The pages aren't for anyone else but me. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm just caging my monkey mind on paper so I can get on with my day. End quote. And what resonated most with me from that is the part about two parts, really. One, the pages aren't for anyone else but me. And two, I'm trying to figure things out. Because as I mentioned before in the intro, while I'm free writing, I am trying to figure things out, whether consciously or unconsciously. Sometimes I literally go into a free writing session, or have, because as my writing stats that I mentioned before show, I've definitely been slacking, but I have gone into free writing sessions with something in mind, something that I want to write about, or just free writing about an idea for a short story. And sometimes I go completely blank, mind blank, pen to paper, and just start writing whatever comes out. Literally, even if it's the sentence I do not know what to write, until my mind flips or switches to something else, as it does, and then I start writing about that. So that piece of I'm trying to figure things out definitely resonated. Also, and probably even more so, where he says the pages aren't for anyone else but me. That's something that I need to underscore, I think more so for myself, because I've been really kind of precious, for lack of a better term, with my writing. Like, I try to have like ideas formulated perfectly in my mind before I start writing. And I think that's just like a form of resistance and procrastination, essentially. That's what it works out to be. And it's weird because I've been in that rut, but I wasn't for anything else that I've actually, worked through and published. And the advice of any and every writer, from fucking Hemingway to with his, the first draft of Everything Is Shit quote, to Stephen Pressfield's teachings on resistance, to Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird advice, is just start writing. Just write. Nobody's going to see the first thing that you write anyway. It's just to literally bleed onto the paper, get the words onto the paper. Don't be precious about it. Don't self-edit before even writing. that literally is procrastination. You're stopping yourself from putting whatever it is out because you're second guessing yourself so much, which is what I'm literally doing or have been doing. So that piece of advice there from Tim definitely resonated with me, and something that I need to remind myself of or bring to the forefront of my brain when I sit down to try to write, which is the pages aren't for anyone else but me. And that, folks, is the piece of advice that I wanted to share, again, from the Daily Stoic newsletter, which I will link to in the episode notes if anybody's interested in checking that out. Tim Ferriss also has a great newsletter called 5 Bullet Friday, which I borrowed from and kind of modeled my Spun Today newsletter after, just in terms of the format of sharing 5 different things. Although I share 5 specific things, he shares 5 random different things within his newsletter. But if anybody's interested to check out mine and what you can expect to receive in my newsletter, feel free to check it out at spuntoday.com/subscribe, absolutely for free. I've been reading Poor Charlie's Almanac, The Essential Wit and Wisdom of Charles T. Munger. For those who don't know, Charlie Munger, who has since passed within the last year or two, R.I.P. Charlie, is the billionaire investor, vice chair / partner of Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett being the more, popular or known name out of the two. Charlie Munger was always more of a quieter, behind the scenes, had a bit of a mystique to him, if you will. And some people even went as far as saying that he was like the quote unquote real brains behind the operation type of thing. But as I'm going to share here in the first takeaway that I have from reading his book, or this book rather, you can see that even he himself never gave credence to that claim. But before I jump into it, let me share the official synopsis for the book. Quote, "Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up." End quote. Charles T. Munger advises in Poor Charlie's Almanac. Originally published in 2005, this compendium of 11 talks delivered by the legendary Berkshire Hathaway vice chairman between 1986 and 2007 has become a touchstone for a generation of investors and entrepreneurs seeking to absorb the enduring wit and wisdom of one of the great minds of the 20th and 21st centuries. Edited by Peter D. Kaufman, chairman and CEO of Glenair and a longtime friend of Charlie Munger, whom he calls this generation's answer to Benjamin Franklin. Poor Charlie's Almanac draws on Munger's encyclopedic knowledge of business, finance, history, philosophy, physics, and ethics, and more, to introduce the lattice work of mental models that underpin his rationale and rigorous approach to life, learning, and decision-making. Delivered with Munger's characteristic sharp wit and rhetorical flair, it is an essential volume for any reader seeking to go to bed a little wiser than when they woke up. Something great to consider watching if you guys are interested are interviews that Charlie Munger has been on. Many times, at least the ones that I've seen, in conjunction or together with Warren Buffett. And you get to see their different mannerisms and just like personalities in general. He's more of a, or was more of a, in my opinion, obviously don't know him, but a dark humor, kind of smartest guy in the room type of vibe, who was funny and witty, but also had an amazing economy of words, where Warren Buffett's personality is a little bit more, I wouldn't say bubbly, but just more personable, friendlier. Maybe I'll look up a couple and link them in the episode notes for you guys to check out. But yeah, let's jump in first with something that Peter D. Kaufman, who again said that Charlie Munger, that he's this generation's answer to Benjamin Franklin. And just something that made Charlie come off as more of a humble guy to me, which was that folks gave him credit for quote unquote enlightening Buffett and putting him onto the finance game and just making him step up his investment game. But Charlie says that Buffett would have done just as well if he himself never existed. And I think that says a lot about his character. I thought this was an interesting takeaway, which is that Charlie Munger worked at Buffett and Son, a grocery store owned by Warren Buffett's grandfather, Ernest P. Buffett, during his teenage years. And they actually didn't know each other back then, Warren and Charlie, back in Omaha, Nebraska. They actually wound up meeting much later in 1959 at a dinner party in Omaha. But both reminisced working there at Buffett's grandfather's grocery store and shared valuable lessons from their time there. And Charlie, long before he met Warren, was accomplished in his own right. He was a lawyer by training, had his own law firm, and also did real estate investing on the side before that fateful dinner party meeting, which eventually became a handshake deal partnership with Warren Buffett when he made the decision to leave his firm. And a cool takeaway I got from the book is that he used to tell the lawyers that worked for them at Berkshire Hathaway that you don't need to take every last dollar, to not think of your relationship with your clients that way, and to choose your clients the way you would choose your friends. Again, I think very telling of his character. Also, when he left his firm, he didn't take the equity stake with him. Instead, he gave it to the estate of a younger partner that had died of cancer, which left behind a wife and kid. And then he went on just to continue making money with his real estate development deals and stock investments. Charlie believes that successful investing boils down to a handful of good decisions. And he called this approach, quote, sit on your ass investing. And he said that the benefits of this approach to investing is paying less to brokers, listening to less nonsense, and if it works, the tax system gives you an extra 1, 2, or 3 percentage points per annum. Another interesting piece of advice, or a takeaway that I got rather, is that Einstein said that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. And Charlie and/or Einstein said the following about that. 1, never interrupt it unnecessarily. 2, avoid unnecessary transactional taxes and frictional costs. 3, never take action for its own sake. 4, be alert for the arrival of luck. And 5, enjoy the process along with the proceeds, because the process is where you live. Which makes sense for that type of investing approach, right? Like, you're not investing for like a quick return and watching the market really closely. It's kind of like set it and forget it, which is in my own personal comfort level with investing. That's where the camp that I fall into. Kind of like a set it and forget it, pick a good, well-known company that I use their products and or am familiar with, like the Googles and Amazons and Nvidias of the world, so on and so forth, and purchase their stocks and forget about them. Look at them again in fucking 10, 15, 20 years. And let that 8th wonder of the world, compound interest, work for you. Another great piece of advice that he shared is be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. So when folks are all in and jumping into, certain positions, certain stocks, certain investments, take pause with that type of approach, like the NFT and crypto crazes and stuff like that. Unless you're really familiar and studied on whatever it is that you're investing in and feel confident in that. But on the flip side, be greedy when others are fearful. When the market crashes, nobody wants to invest, everything's going down. It's an opportunity for investors to buy, good value stocks on the cheap. Think of a like Black Friday sale or something like that, like real ones, not when they like mark up the price and then tell you, 30% off this TV, even though the week before it was 30% less, the actual cost. But think of like a real sale when you could buy something at 20, 30, 40, 50% off. That's like the similar type of thing that you're doing when you're purchasing a stock during a crash or during a downturn of the stock market. The stock went down, but that doesn't mean it's not worth what it was before. It's just a downturn in the market. Now, this next piece of advice that he shared, I don't fully understand. It goes into tax law, and I don't understand the nuances there, or like how exactly this calculation is done. However, I believe I get the underlying point, which is, again, going with the theme of set it and forget it mentality to investing, sit on your ass investing, as he called it. relating to letting compound interest work for you. And he says that buying something that compounds at, say, 15% per year, if you have to pay taxes once at the end, the way that works out after taxes is that you wind up keeping 13.3% per annum if you do the calculation. That's the piece that I'm saying I don't know how to calculate myself, but I'll take the billionaire's word for it. Versus, in contrast, the same investment, but paying taxes every year on what you earn, then your return is only 15% minus the 35% of the 15% earned. So the 35% in taxes that you're paying yearly on that 15% earned, which only works out to 9.75% per year of compounded interest. So if you sit on your ass, instead of, say, collecting income and cashing out from the investment over that period of time, that difference of 3.5% over a 30-year span, for example, compounding is a truly eye-opening amount. And he adds that you get a huge edge from nothing but just the way that income taxes work. That's an interesting way to have that work in your favor. I also like this piece of advice for a young person, career advice specifically. He says, don't sell anything that you wouldn't buy yourself. Don't work for anyone you don't respect and admire. And work only with people that you enjoy. And in line with that advice, he shares, actually, let me take a step back. Those 3 pieces of career advice definitely make a lot of sense to me. And, you know, in a perfect utopia type situation, you will always work with people that you love and work for people that you respect and admire. But as you go through life, you're going to learn and go through situations and, you know, life lessons, if you will, and bump up against folks and work for people and work with people that you don't respect, that you don't admire, that you don't enjoy working with, but that you're in a situation where you kind of sort of have to, you know, you can't just be idealistic 24/7, especially when you're talking in terms of work and a job, or more so in a career, you know, once you're established within a certain field or within a certain company, for example. So those are definitely great ideas to strive for and to want to end up at, but also temper that with knowing that you will have to pay your dues. You might have asshole bosses every once in a while. I always remember advice of my father, which would always say, you know, keep your head down, for lack of a better term, and work hard. You know, do your best at whatever it is that you do everything that's asked of you. He had that type of approach. And those values were definitely instilled in me and how I approached pretty much every job that I've had. And even in situations where I did wind up working for people that I lost respect for, or that I didn't admire, or that I just didn't enjoy working with for whatever reason. So it's not to say if, you know, you don't enjoy working with somebody, you know, quit your job and go look for another one. But you definitely appreciate the jobs or positions that you have when you do wind up working with people that you do enjoy being around, and that you respect, and that try to make you better, and that look out for you, so on and so forth, and that you look out for when the shoe's on the other foot. So definitely great career advice there. Then the last piece of advice that I'm going to share from Poor Charlie's Almanac, or the last takeaway that I'm going to share rather, is a piece of advice from Charlie Munger's dad, which was, as you go through life, sell your services once in a while to an unreasonable blowhard if that's what you need to do to feed your family. But run your own life like Grant McFadden. Now, I had to look up who Grant McFadden was. I didn't get it from the context of within the book. But Grant McFadden is mentioned in Charlie Munger's anecdotes. This is what I looked up. Grant McFadden is mentioned in Charlie Munger's anecdotes as a person who exemplified ethical behavior and the benefits of treating others well. According to Munger, McFadden is someone who promptly fixes problems and is nice to people, which results in fewer legal troubles. Munger contrasts McFadden with a big blowhard who generates a lot of legal work due to overreaching and misbehavior. Munger has used McFadden as an example to illustrate the importance of being ethical and kind in business and personal dealings. So what Charlie took away from that lesson, and what he mentions, in this book is that his father taught him that lesson very cleverly. He says that instead of pounding it in that, he should live his life this specific way, like Graham McFadden, he told it to him in a way that made it a slight mental reach, i.e. he had to figure out how to live like Graham McFadden. How did Graham McFadden live? And because of that reach, that mental reach that he had to do, the lesson was held better and he retained it for all his life. And I just took that as a takeaway because I thought it was a clever and interesting piece of parenting advice. And that, folks, were just some takeaways that resonated with me from reading Poor Charlie's Almanac, The Essential Wit and Wisdom of Charles T. Munger. If interested, I will link to the book in the episode notes for you guys to check out. Last but certainly not least, that sounds wrong for some reason. The piece of free writing that I'm going to share with you fine folks today, you will be able to find on my website under spuntoday.com/free writing. And this is one of the types of free writing that I do. Like I mentioned, you can do it with a specific goal in mind or specific thought in mind, or just completely blank, nothing specific to write about. This one was prompted by a specific quote, and I free wrote with that quote in mind. So the quote is from Customato, which was famously Mike Tyson's trainer growing up. Mike Tyson, the boxer, one of the best, if not the best, heavyweight boxers of all time. And he said, quote, "Fear is like fire. It can cook your food or burn your house down," end quote. Which I've definitely heard variations of that in the past. So I'm not sure if that's like 100% an original thought, but that specific version of it is attributed to him. Either way, with that said, I wrote to that, the duality of emotions. They can fuel your drive and dedication or cripple every ambition you dare to have. Where the end result falls within that spectrum of possibilities relies on your intent and perspective. Which direction will you steer those emotions when they begin to bubble up to the surface? Your intent in those moments matter. Emotions don't happen to you. They just happen. Actively practice to navigate them in your intended direction. Choose to cook your food, not to burn your house down. And I wrote that on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022 at 8:13 a.m. And I actually like this post. I still agree with a lot of what's in here. Just interpreting that fear is like fire, it can cook your food or burn your house down, interpreting that through the vein of emotions and how you feel and how you react to feelings, and how that fear/fire can fuel your drive to go in a positive direction, like away from that fear/fire, or it can cripple you, aka burn everything down, and you just give into it. That's all definitely within that spectrum of possibilities there that I reference. And then in a, very apropos to, speaking to myself as I do within these free writing posts, which direction will you steer those emotions when they begin to bubble up to the surface? So when you begin to feel fear, are you going to go in the direction of positivity away from that fear, or just give into it and, spiral into negativity? And I highlight that your intent in those moments definitely matter, which I would agree to. Emotions don't happen to you, they just happen. So in other words, don't take it personally. You're feeling how you feel. And I really like this part, which was actively practice to navigate them in your intended direction. So if your intended direction is to be positive, to let the fear fuel you in a positive direction, be intentional about it. Actively practice navigating them in that direction. Speak to yourself, write to yourself. I feel fear. I'm scared of XYZ. I'm going to use that fear to accomplish said goal instead of not choosing to face it head on and giving into it. So yeah, thought that was a pretty good piece. Definitely check that one out and more at spuntoday.com/free writing. And feel free to share, comment, and all that good stuff. And that, folks, was episode 279 of the Spun Today podcast. Thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to share a few ways, especially for my fellow writers and creatives out there, that you can help support this podcast. Discount codes, tools that I use within my own writing. I'm going to tell you a bit about each of them. Pro Writing Aid, Mockup Shots, which is a great marketing tool for your books, so on and so forth. So stick around to listen to all that good stuff, and I will check you guys out next time. Peace. What's up, folks? Tony here. I hope you're enjoying the Spun Today podcast as much as I enjoy producing it for you. Here are a few ways you can help support the show. For my fellow writers and creatives out there, a really cool way you can help support the show is by going to spuntoday.com/support and clicking on the Pro Writing Aid banner. If you're a listener of the show, you know that I use Pro Writing Aid to pre-edit all of my writing before I put it out or before I ship it off to my editor, so that it is in as pristine condition as I can probably get it. Pro Writing Aid offers a great toolkit that helps you polish your work with easy-to-use grammar checks and a writing assistant that also looks into things like pacing improvements, typos, punctuations, and much more. Go to spuntoday.com/support, click on the banner for Pro Writing Aid, and check out their free option as well as their different tiers of paid options. spuntoday.com/support. A great way for my fellow writers and creatives out there to help support this show is by going to spuntoday.com/support and clicking on the Mockup Shots banner. When I first started writing and putting out content, I wanted to think of creative ways to help market my books. So I would take my own pictures, place the books in different places, take it to the beach with me, put it out in the snow, and I'd wind up with a couple good usable images and a bunch more mediocre ones. And also, in the case of the snow example, a completely soggy book. Then I found Mockup Shots. In one click, Mockup Shots turns your book cover into thousands of images, videos, graphics, and more. If you follow me on social, it's what I use to promote my books. You can check them out on Instagram @SpunToday to take a look at the professional creative quality of what Mockup Shots has to offer. And now, for my listeners, you can get unlimited lifetime access to the largest instant book mockup archive for 50% off. That's right, that's 50% off. And you can use it for any